Dámela, dámela pa' aquí, dame pa' llevar. A mí me gusta como tú lo meneas. Muévete ese bam bam y grita.
¡Bienvenidos a la cripta! Dame tu cosita, dame tu cosita, ay, dame tu cosita,
Someone call a paramedic. I can't speak, it's all phonetic. Made me forget every word, cause like, that's a lot of letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. 911, hello, it's me, Sophia. Yes, this is an emergency. Yes, the way they put it down on me got the whole room tipsy. Hyperventilating when we be procreating. Where'd you learn to do that thing? How do you hold the bat when you swing? I don't think I can breathe, I don't think I can be, I don't think I can think, I don't think I can see. Fuck. Someone call a paramedic. I can't speak, it's all phonetic. Made me forget every word, cause like, that's a lot of letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Cut your pick out and put it in my locket, so I could kiss you whenever I wanted. Hyperventilating.
Oh boy. I hit the I did the classic and I hit the wrong playlist. But it's fine. Why is my mic so? Hold on, I have to fix my gain. That's really weird. My gain was like, is that still bad? Is it Hold on. I'm sound checking really quick. It's not that bad. I don't know. Oh, it got like turned up on actual Twitch. Oh, hey, Miss Monroe. How's it going? That should be fine. Okay. Hey. Alrighty. So first things first. This is the... I forgot to turn... I'm gonna beg you guys to please not use sound alerts. I forgot to turn them off again. I don't know. Can I turn them off from here? No, I can't. Oh well, it's my fault. Last time I had a fucking jump scare when Rob joined. Rob accidentally joined the call for the sober show. Unnecessarily early. How am I? I'm doing good. We're about to get to our what's supposed to be a weekly discussion about sobriety and Magic the Gathering, but we missed a week. So I guess for the moment it's bi-weekly. So we can't get to that before we can't get to that right away, because I do need to make it a little clear. So far nobody has said anything incredibly triggering, at least to my standards, or incredibly heavy. But the possibility is always there. I don't know our guest and this goes for any guest. I don't know their experiences beforehand. I go through their content. I make a little list. I get some questions. Blah blah blah. All that, and then I kind of just give them a platform. So I don't know if they're gonna have triggering stories or any of that. But if they do, just a little advance content warning for this show specifically. Dear God, I put out on Twitter that I'm no longer, I forgot to announce I'm no longer looking for an artist. I reactivated my Newgrounds account and was immediately recognized by old people in like old YouTube animation circles. So that's cool. But because that also opened the door to like a bunch of people I used to know are like, hey, I still do work, and I'm like, oh cool, I'll just I'll go with who I know, so that's cool. Anyways, I don't really super duper plug sponsors in this show, but obviously it wouldn't be the start of a stream without at least referencing Rogue Energy, because I got a package today. I don't know if you guys saw it on TikTok. I had been bitching and moaning about pina colada flavor Rogue, and how I hadn't had a chance to get one. And one came in the mail today. And I noticed, I don't know if this is just me, but I got a Rocket Pop too. There's a Rocket Pop game. I'm not really super interested in Rocket Pop, but I did try it, and it is really good. The pina colada is my favorite flavor. And to segue with that, that is not because I was an alcoholic for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It is just the flavor. I don't know what it is. The flavor, the pina colada flavor. I just really enjoy, and that didn't contribute to my drinking problems at all, ever. Pina coladas are like, if something is pina colada flavor, I will drink it. Again, just because, I don't know, it's something about the flavor. It's just, it's not triggering to me. But like the smell of like Fireball or Jack Daniels is triggering to me, but the taste of pina colada is not. I don't know if that's weird or if there's any other people who've had drinking experiences who have ever been in similar boats. I don't know. It's weird to me. It's like I spent a year of my life in the hospital, and there are still like smells of disinfectant, or if I have to get blood drawn, or if I go to the hospital and like I get an IV and I taste the saline. It's like stuff like that is super, I don't want to say super triggering, but like invokes flashbacks and sensatory overload, I guess. I don't know what the right term would be, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I never had that problem with pina colada flavored things, which is really weird to me, because just the smell of Fireball is enough for me to like gag and just feel very gross. I think on our first episode I told the Fireball story. I used to drink Fireballs by the handle, like 1 or 2 a day. And now it's just this, I can't even do the smell. So but yeah, I'm gonna hit up our guests, see what's all good. Oh, they're in the DGen Discord too. That's really cool. It's always cool seeing people also in like the Degenerate Gaming Discord, which I am not a part of. I don't know why people think I am. I am not a part of Degenerate Gaming. I just know a lot of them, I guess. I don't know. We're live, and I'm ready when you are. I do have one thing to ask. I forgot to ask this earlier, and I'm asking it now in DM before we actually get into the call. I ask every guest, just if there's anything that they don't want to talk about or have brought up or anything like that. Well, I have shrimp in my teeth. I had like shrimp dumplings for dinner. Well, I had a shrimp dumpling, like a large one, more like a shrimp cake. But unreasonably early. That's an interesting one. Not really. Something comes up around the beach. Gotcha. Hello?
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. Going good.
It's good to hear. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. I am Neil Akins, aka Ishmelon. I'm a voice actor. I'm a streamer. I do a little bit of video content creation on YouTube, trying to break into that. Most of what I stream is either Magic the Gathering, like drafting on Arena, or just playing RPGs like Dragon Age and stuff. And I'm doing this for a little over a year, and I'm starting to catch some sort of angle on the interweb. So I don't know, I'm pretty happy with this. Thank you for having me on. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being here. Yeah, I was watching your Cult of Lamb video earlier, and then I watched your one Dominaria draft. I have been not
Yep.
having fun in Dominaria draft at all.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Really? God,
Nope.
I'm having such a blast with it.
I can't put it into words, but it feels the best draft vacuum I can compare it to is it feels like Gatewatch. And I don't know, I don't know in my head why I keep connecting it to like Gatewatch, but I hated drafting Gatewatch so much that I just stopped playing Limited at that time. And I don't know if it was like Voice of Resurgence or like what, it's no specific card made me hate it. It was just how
Gate Crash.
Gate Crash, yeah.
Okay, good.
Gatewatch, I don't even think I played.
I was about to say Gatewatch. Maybe there's some correlation between like Kicker and Colorless Mana.
No, that would make total sense. But no, Gate Crash, it was like in my head, I think it was just I don't like really go wide limited sets, and that's kind of just what this feels like.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of just like building boards until something breaks parity.
It's really grindy, and it's like I like grindy formats and I like grindy metas, but it's just I don't know. I'll figure it out more towards the end of the set, and then I'll have like a moment where I'm like, oh, I should have been drafting this way. Yeah. And it'll be too late, but
yeah, the dual lands and domain are all really strong, and I will say, to this set's credit, it is very far from the Crimson Vow type limited format, whereas just if you don't have a bomb, you're not going to have a good time. Like so many commons and uncommons actually have power in this set.
It's crazy how you don't really need to fish or hope that just any niche rare will wheel.
Yep.
And I feel like that's how the last few sets have felt. Like you're like, okay, I have my commons and uncommons. Now where's my rare? Like where's this rare that I'm going to splash a third or fourth color for to win the game? It kind of just feels like you can win the game off like Root Wallas or what's the one?
I know.
The Kavu, that Kavu that gets +1/-1. It's like the other night we drafted a deck with 4 of those, and it's like, why are people passing this card? It's literally like a 5/1, and I think it has menace or something.
I played against someone who had it has menace.
It's so good.
I played against someone who had that and Baird, and I'm just like, that's an immediate wonderful combo because Baird only cares about creatures with power greater than their base power, and that thing you pay a red, you got it.
It's so. I think people see the -1 and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do that," but it's like, I don't know. What's the one card? Power Stone Infusion. It's the same. It's the same sort of thing. It's so good. Like the way.
Well, here's the thing: is like when there's a set that has literally Lightning Strike in it, I look at anything with 3 toughness and I'm like, okay, you're gonna die. I might as well pump them -1.
But I mean, isn't that how like it seems like every set that comes out in Magic right now has a 1 mana deal 2 red spell and a 2 mana deal 3 red spell. Whether or not there's conditional effects to that or requirements to that, it just feels like we get a shock and a lightning strike in every limited format these days.
It's one of those things where like people can argue about power creep, because I know that this set also specifically is the first time where I have consciously noticed, wow, there is a huge difference in the power of the cards in this set and the power of cards in previous sets from like even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because in this set, you've got that one Nishoba Brawler, which is the 2 mana star 3 trample, where star is the domain, and that's an uncommon.
The card's really good.
It's literally just better than any bear if you have 2 land types. And it's a 2 mana card. I love it to death. I'm not complaining at all. I love it to death.
It's crazy because it's like a worse Territorial Kavu. In Territorial Kavu, people thought that card was going to get banned for like a minute.
Of Wild Nicodle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. God, the power creep is so awkward. What is it? There's not a single vanilla creature in standard right now or something.
Too.
They're just trying to make every card say or do something that either pushes you ahead or has immediate value, which is great for people who have been playing the game for a long time. But I think for newer casual players, it's really awkward to just not have that phase where you're learning about Magic without having to read every single card and every creature that your opponent plays.
Yeah, I worry about the barrier to entry almost. It makes me think about like in original Theros, there was the as another example of power creep and the rising complexity. There was Oresco's Swiftclaw, which was a 2-mana 3/1 in white, and now you have the 2-mana 3/1 in white with a kicker to make everybody sack. Like the complexity there is like, oh, kicker. Does that mean that it increases the mana value? Do I need to have black mana? And exactly for the point of the complexity increase. Like,
what's so funny about Swiftclaw is that card, if I'm remembering correctly, that card has like a paragraph of flavor text. And it's like there's probably less flavor text on that card than there are like keywords or ETBs of cards of exact, power, toughness, CMC, and rarity that there are today. Like a Cat Warrior today would have like
text.
It's crazy. It's insane. But like I don't know, I like it. Like I like really high power level Magic, but I understand a lot of casual people aren't really a fan of it. I mean, look at the Commander decks. The 40k ones are absolutely ridiculous.
I have takes on that, but
what are your
don't
takes?
want to duck anybody's yum. Oh god.
I gotcha.
Yeah, like I think it's cool that people are fans of Magic and Warhammer are getting something that they can enjoy with both worlds. From the perspective of myself, who is someone that doesn't have much interest in Warhammer 40k or just in generally at all, it's just not my thing.
I gotcha.
But also looking at like some of the Secret Lair stuff in the past, the Universes Beyond, and my take is like, I loved when they did that one Secret Lair that took the Stranger Things cards and gave them basically reskinned as Innistrad characters, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
I thought that was a perfect solution for that. But then I see these full Commander decks, and I see these super interesting, really cool and powerful cards that they're making that are completely unique to that 40k Commander set. And I'm like, I just wish it was in the Magic world.
They're not doing they're not going to do that Universe Beyond treatment, are they? Like they did with the Godzilla cards and stuff. Like these,
it's full.
They're
like,
just they are what they are.
Perfect, like exactly what they should be. But yeah, these Universes Beyond, at least from what I know, and I'm not super involved in like immediate announcements or anything, or like the news on any of the creation or anything. But I feel like it would be impractical for them to reskin every card in those sets, and so that's kind of just what makes me sad.
It would be like what 500 cards reskinned because there's 4 or 5 of these decks, and every one of them has so a lot of the black one they revealed today has like a few reprints in it.
Yeah.
I guess aside from
the decks has a cultivate, like literally cultivate just with 40k art. I think that's cool. I think that's awesome.
Stuff like that's cool. Yeah.
The same thing as though I have that opinion and that perspective, and I see so many people that I follow on Twitter, that I'm friends with on Twitter in the Magic community, and they're like, "Oh, look at this! It's so cool!" And I'm like, "I'm so happy for you. I'm glad you're enjoying that. I'm not gonna step in because, like I said, I don't want to make anything unfun for people."
Yeah, I don't really play. I don't play Commander at all. I shouldn't say I don't really. I just don't. I don't play Commander. But seeing people like really excited, like the Darkness reprint, everyone's super excited about.
Wait,
the Darkness
is that a reprint?
Yeah.
Oh my god! I saw that and I was just like, oh, it's a black fog now. Okay, but I didn't know that was a reprint. Is that a reprint?
Yeah, Darkness is a reprint.
Oh my god!
That card is super iconic. And I saw it on Twitter and I was like, oh wow, that's probably going to be the most. Well, other than what is it? There's the artifact from the black deck that makes everything artifacts. I think that's going to be the most expensive
it makes
card.
All, like creature cards and stuff.
It is wild. It's like what is it? Maskwood Nexus, but instead of changeling,
Yeah.
they're all just artifacts, which is absolutely bonkers.
I saw Yogg on Twitter posted a combo of that with a Cauldron and Cat, and I'm like, oh god.
It's gonna happen.
Oh no.
It's
Yup.
really gonna happen. I'm so glad that the Necron deck is like looking to be the best one, because I don't play like the tabletop 40k. I play the RTS ones, like the the very nerdy Sims or Civilization-esque ones.
Oh, nice.
And Necrons are always my go-to race. So seeing that they're in mono black, which I love, and artifact theme, which I love, and they have the best reprints, I'm very excited about that. But everything else, I don't really care about. It's kind of just whatever.
Yeah, I got a couple of buddies in my IRL play group, and they're pretty big into 40k. And I showed them a while ago when it got announced. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I told them the colors of the decks. I'm like, you know what, that matches up pretty well.
Yeah, I'm very excited about 40k decks, but I don't know. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. So, I forgot where we were before we just went off on 40k decks.
We literally just bounced off of after I introduced myself. You're talking about crap. Oh, you gotta love the tangents. That's why we're here.
Pretty much. That's how I feel like that's how a lot of this show is going to go. It's just absolutely just talking and getting comfortable and breaking ice. So.
Oh yeah.
There's not really a good segue to go into any of this, but do you want to talk about your struggles and what they might be?
Yes, that's what we're here for. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I try to find a way to get into it lightly, but we kind of just ranted about cool cards and stuff.
I mean, at some point, the segue itself just becomes gimmicky. But yeah, God, where do I start? I know where to start. So, my family has always been, which, by the way, getting into to the listeners, my sobriety that I'm on the show for is from alcohol. I'm actually 2 years sober, as we are right now, and just to put a context here, but my family has always been regular drinkers. Like I'm not sure if heavy is the right word, but my mom loves her wine. Dad and brother drink beer all the time, and so I kind of just grew up in that atmosphere, and where it wasn't such a huge deal. Just drink a bunch all the time, and not like I don't think any of them have had problems to the point where like I would consider it a problem, but just setting a bit of context. And then I remember as I started to get a little older and I was still living at home, with the accessibility of alcohol to myself, once I realized, I enjoy this, I started drinking regularly and started getting more into like whiskeys and some cocktails sometimes. Like, oh, look at this cool stuff I can create. Then I moved out of home for the first time, and it was a bad situation I was living in where I moved to. I was in a house. I moved to a house with like that had two dudes who were like in their 30s already, and I was like early 20s at this point, early mid 20s at this point, and they had been living together for a while. And I got the room at the top, at the front of the house, right where the sun shines, and it was like 10 by 12 maybe. And it was rough, and I was hating it. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and so my drinking started to pick up a bit. And then pretty quickly, I moved out of there and moved in with somebody I worked with at a bar, and he was a sommelier, and he knew all about like wines and all sorts of liquors and everything. He'd been a server and a bartender at some really fancy restaurant or hotel in LA before he moved up here to Washington. And so I moved in with him, and I lived with him for like a year and like into the pandemic and everything. But certainly working at a bar definitely didn't help my alcohol intake. I don't think I ever worked drunk. I don't think, and this is another thing that kind of I don't know if worsened, but affected my alcohol intake or not. But I guess justified in my head is I would make sure, one, I was never affected at work, and I would make sure that two, it never affected personal life or like I made a hard cut to myself. Like I would never drink before 5, before 6, whatever arbitrary rule I put to myself to justify the amount I was drinking. But this was about the time I started to realize I kind of drink a lot, because I would think, like, when was the last full day I went through without a glass of wine, glass of whiskey, downing half a bottle of whiskey. It was rough. And then then the pandemic hit and quarantine, and I was locked up in the apartment pretty much for myself, because my roommate, we still worked at the same place, and my roommate was like one of the senior servers there, so he was still doing like the takeout stuff for the restaurant. And meanwhile, I was laid off, and it was just a lot of time alone, which gets you to really stare in the mirror, and sort of try and assess yourself. But the thing was, I hadn't realized it at the time for basically the entire time I had been drinking. But the reason that I drank so much, and I realized this in quarantine, was that I used it as a sort of escape. I used it as a way to allow myself to not face all of the stress and anxiety, depression especially, that I had been facing in my life at the time. And I realized that, and I thought that, like, acknowledging that and knowing that was enough, and that I didn't need to drop it. I didn't need to let it go, just because I would consciously recognize, okay, I'm not feeling great, I'm taking a drink, and that's okay. I would allow it to myself.
Right.
And that would go on for a while. And that's not, I don't think I need to say, that's not a healthy response to that. Like, knowing you have a problem and consciously letting that problem persist, that's not a healthy response.
No. Well, I think Matt and I had talked about that last week, with acknowledging that there is a problem, or an addiction, or an obsession, or just like a problem in general. And a lot of the times people will say, like, oh, that's the first step. But I feel like the first step analogy is just a little weird, because you can acknowledge that you have a problem and still have that problem impact, your mental health, your social relationships, your work relationships, stuff like that. And you can full well acknowledge you have an addiction, or are struggling with anything, and still continue to struggle. I think I don't know if you had said, but was there ever any attempt to get, like, support or help for your drinking? At least at that time?
No, there never was. I had a couple of friends mention at different times that they were maybe a little concerned about how much I drank, which this is also at the point where I was kind of known in my friend group as the guy who drank, as the alcohol guy who would bring ciders or some liquors to every party, every get-together. And that's kind of what I would just rely on to really just, like, clear my head, because I'm super introverted.
Right.
And I kind of also saw alcohol as, like, a tool to be more socially engaging, I guess, which I never really needed, but I thought I did. And it didn't help the fact that I have such a strong tolerance for alcohol. And so that kind of just fed into it too, like, oh, I can have a couple of shots and I'll be fine.
Right.
God, I definitely drove home drunk more than more than once. Certainly a countable number of times, which, going back, I know my mom's brother was actually killed by a drunk driver, and that's one of the things where, like, it felt weird when I told my mom that I had a drinking problem. I just didn't bring that part up at all.
How did your mom react to that?
It was over the phone.
Over the phone?
And I never said the word addiction because in reality I've never been diagnosed for an addiction for it. But I knew it in the level that I was taking in and how regularly it was and how, like, the cravings that I was having at that point. It was at least getting close. But so yeah, her brother had been killed by a drunk driver. Her sister had been a heroin addict, and there were enough problems there. When I told her that over the phone, it's hard to gauge emotional response outside of what a person is saying. She kind of just said, "Okay," and I couldn't tell if she was trying to be supportive or if she was just like taking this news and trying to process it at the same time as I was telling her. But I told her after I called her and told her this after I'd already decided to quit. It was within days after I decided, and she was one of the first people I had told about it, and it was hard to gauge her reaction, really. But I mean, it's kind of just how the family is in general, is pretty emotionally separate.
I feel that. When I went to rehab, my mom was more mad that the rehab I went to was something like 5.5 hours away, and my mom was more mad that she was going to have to drive up there to bring up like clothes and stuff than she was that I was addicted to drugs.
Oh, that shit.
And I was just like, fuck, sorry. Man, that's like, well, it's not. My mom is such a complex person to where it's kind of just like, I'm sure, I know my mom loves me, but it's like, that's the kind of mom she is, where she's like, oh, you know, why do you get to be addicted to drugs? Now I got to drive 5.5 hours.
Why did you have to make your personal inconvenience for me? Yeah. I get that.
And it's like,
I have a complicated relationship with my own mother too.
Oh, like, man.
She, as an example, in high school, I was in band for a while. My senior year, I took a guitar class, and for the final project for that class, the teacher for it, who was also the band director, he had everybody do like a concert essentially. Like each person would have a song that they had practiced and everything, would play it on stage for all the families of the people that are in the class. And I'll never forget this. I played my song, and I did a duet with someone who was also in the class. And at the end of the concert, my mom came up to me and was like, "Wow, that's really impressive." You know, and she told me how she didn't film it because she was worried. And she said this to me. I don't know if it's the exact wording or not, but she said, "I was just worried you were going to embarrass us."
Oh my God, that's so
and
awkward.
My God, thank God that her friend who went there with her filmed it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have it. But like, God, talk about a fucking knife to the heart. Like, thanks for the support, Mom.
Before my addiction stuff, I was like a jazz pianist prodigy in high school.
Oh, and hell yeah!
I did like my piano teacher put me on like headlining for, I don't even remember what it was. And my mom didn't come to it because she doesn't like piano music.
Oh God!
And it never like impacted me. But it's like, it's just so weird. Cause it's like, I have this intense awkward relationship with my mom, but it's not like it's not like she was like, I'm not coming because I don't support you. She's like, oh my god, I don't like piano music. She's like, but I'm proud of you, like, have fun. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh god, that.
So I absolutely understand your guitar class situation.
Yeah.
Oh man.
If I could actually bring it back to something,
Go for it.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual the moment that I decided to quit, because when I did quit, it was cold turkey, like immediate. And I mentioned earlier that one of the things I tried to make sure for myself is that my drinking wouldn't negatively affect anyone that I knew, anyone that I cared about. And for the most part, it hadn't. Mostly it had just been me sort of commiserating for myself. And most of the time I drank alone. Like, it was just me taking the rest of the day and just letting it slough off my back like water on a duck's back, just letting it just let myself stew in not needing to think.
Yeah.
So there was one day, one of my friends who, her life was very turbulent at this point that we knew each other, and we had previously been involved to a certain extent before this, but we'd kind of just simmered down into just being friends, but we still were very close and relied on each other. And there was one night she just came over to talk and hang out, and I was already a couple of glasses of whiskeys in, and we were just talking about stuff, and I ended up getting a little too invasive with the conversation, I guess, to the point that made her uncomfortable. I don't want to say any specific details. But
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, that was the one. Like, I apologized to her walking to her car, and I apologized to her the next morning because I knew I felt terrible, and I apologized to my roommate because, like, I felt like I had been rude to him as well. He admitted to me that I hadn't been rude to him at all, but it was just, in general, I felt terrible. And the worst part is, one thing that she mentioned to me is, like, in the conversation over text when I apologized to her, one thing she mentioned to me is that, like, she hated seeing me like that and me drinking to that point because it reminded her of her mother, who was also an alcoholic. And that really struck a chord with me and told me that, like, Neil, obviously this is a problem. You have to fucking fix this. And so I quit the next day, and I don't think that my sobriety has fixed that relationship at all, because I haven't talked to her since February this year. But I definitely think that was a clear indicator and a clear sign that it was something I needed to fix. And that's something that my alcohol abuse has lost me, is probably the closest relationship I've ever had to a person. And so that's one thing that's really kept me going as far as keeping away from alcohol, because I haven't had a drop since August 18th of 2020.
Yeah. That's really good to hear.
Yeah. It's nice. It really is nice. Not only for the obvious fact of avoiding substance abuse, of course,
right,
but also, like, fuck, alcohol gets expensive. Like, I shit you not, there was a point where, probably at the peak of it, I was going through like 2 bottles of whiskey, at least 1 bottle of wine, and at least a single 6-pack or 2 in a week. And it was just, and I don't know, I haven't talked to many people else who have had alcohol problems aside from yourself, of course. Mm-hmm. But and so I can't really compare that to anything. But that just, whenever I say it out loud, sounds like so much.
How expensive it gets, and just like the sheer volume of liquid that you're consuming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like there were times where I did go through a bottle in a night, and I am still a huge fan of whiskey. Love whiskey to death, and God, like, talking about cravings a little bit, like I miss that shit. I was big into scotch and just whiskeys, bourbons, loved all of it. And I still I picked up a job again at that same bar, but I'm working in the kitchen now.
Okay.
But whenever I go up front, like I feel that craving. I'm just like, oh, I remember that. That was really nice.
Is it like is it just the smell of it? Do you ever just smell the liquor?
Yeah, the smell is a really big. I say trigger, but I don't mean that in the typical connotation now. I just mean that as like a memory trigger. Smell is in general is really strong for me, and so whenever I smell a whiskey like that, or just any cocktails in general, to be honest, it's just like I feel that like wave inside of just I want it. I want it, and I'm at the point now where I recognize that and I can easily tamp it down and just control it, but like I still feel it. Which I think is probably a sign that it was an addictive problem, is because accounts that I've heard is just the craving never leaves.
Well, that's absolutely true. It's I don't know if you were here before when the stream started, but I was talking about like I can't if I smell Fireball or like any sort of strong like scenty whiskey, I will get incredibly nauseous and gag and just be so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I used to drink like the not 2 liters, but like the the like liter and a half little handles of Fireball. I would go through like 3 of those a day, and the smell of it. First of all, that's like that alone is like $100 a day on alcohol.
Oh yeah,
it's a lot of money.
And Fireball too is like the sugariest.
Oh my god, yeah,
it's gonna make you sick.
I was incredibly sick all the time, always drunk, and it's like when I get like a whiff of whiskey, especially Fireball, all of that sickness just comes back, like, and it's like I can't do this. This is like a lot, and I struggle to determine if that's like what you would define as a trigger, or if it's just like I forget how I worded it earlier in the stream, but it's just this like sensory overload of the worst kind of nostalgia. But
yeah, no, I feel that.
I had also talked about like pina colada flavored stuff I love, and I struggle to determine if that's because it tastes like an alcohol that I enjoy, or if it's just because I like the taste of it. It's just this really weird, like, I wouldn't call it a struggle, but it's this weird little battle in my mind, because I go to Outback every year for my birthday, and this year they have a drink. It's the pina koala, and it's like a pina colada, but they have a little koala shape in it, and I was like, oh, I gotta get that, because like I'll have my one hard drink a year, and then there's a little koala on it, and then I was like, am I getting this for the koala, or am I getting this because like I want to have like a hard drink? And I ultimately decided it was for the koala. But no, it's validating to hear that you've had sensation cravings and stuff, because it seems like people who, at least people I've talked to, at least in the vacuum of the show so far, have all had cravings and temptations and had their own ways to sort of like deal with them, God,
I was gonna say something. Fuck.
Is it just as hard for you to not drink now as it was when you quit? Because you quit cold turkey, and I can't imagine that's easy at all.
Which now I remember what I was trying to say, because that actually connects in my mind. When I quit, yes, I did just drop it the next day. Like I gave some bottles that I already had to people. Any beers I just gave to my roommate, and I stopped. Which, that's one of the things that, because I also mentioned I was never diagnosed with alcohol addiction. I've never been to an AA meeting, but I really want to go to one and talk to people that have had the problem worse than I have, because part of it is like I suffer often from imposter syndrome, being a voice actor, being a streamer, and all this stuff. Like right at the beginning and everything, feeling like what business do I have being here? Like I'm a nobody and all that. Typical imposter syndrome stuff. And so that kind of leaks into the sobriety and everything. I'm thinking like, oh, it was so easy for you to quit. Like, are you sure you were even having a problem with it? This is the thought that goes through my head, and so I'm always just like back and forth of like, maybe it wasn't that much of a problem. At the same time, it clearly affected me and everything, and I don't know. It's weird to think about that, but at the end of the day, I'm like, this has been nothing but good for me. Dropping all of it anyway, I wouldn't take it back.
I think in that situation, and again, I usually preface the show with this: I'm not a professional at all, but I've been addicted to a lot of things. But I think it's the sort of, if you feel like you had a compulsion to drink or an addiction, however you want to word it, I think what matters the most personally for a person is how they feel after the fact. Like, do you feel that you overcame something that was a struggle, or do you feel like it was more like a bump in the road, or do you feel as though it was just, just a hard time? Because I 100% know I was addicted to alcohol, but I was not addicted to, there was a summer where I did a lot of MDMA. I was not, I know that I was not addicted to MDMA because I was able to just kind of like stop doing it, and looked back on how stopping the MDMA usage was radically different than the process of like stopping alcohol, at least to me. And everybody's different. So, it's not to compare journeys, but it's the way I see it. I personally feel like if you look back on your journey from start to finish, it's completely your choice to decide and define whether or not you were an addict, or whatever word you want to use for it. Because our guest last week used the word obsession, which I thought was a really, really cool way to sort of retrospectively look at the issues that he had. I feel like a lot of people who get through situations like this don't really look at it that way. And I've heard a lot of people who had drinking issues have that same sort of thought that you had, where it's like, well, was it an addiction, or was it just an accessibility thing? And I think at the end of the day, you don't need a professional to tell you that you might have had, impulses or addiction issues or obsession issues. I think if you're able to look back and say like, yeah, I can pinpoint exact moments where I felt those ways, and that's on you as a person and an individual to sort of define your journey, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's genuinely very validating. But yeah, no, you're fine. No, and it's not to say that I'm completely like sober from every sort of drug and everything, but like I've done weed, I've done coke, I've done Molly once, and none of those really ever caught on. You mentioned accessibility, and that was certainly a factor. As far as like calling it an obsession or an addiction, those words don't feel accurate to my particular circumstance, which is logical. Like everybody's different. Everybody's exactly like you're saying. Like nobody knows your own life and your own hurdles better than you do. For me, I think it was mostly some place to run away to. It was a cover and excuse for cowardice, because I wasn't letting myself face the mental stuff I'd been going through at the time. I mentioned depression, anxiety, stress just in general. Yeah, it was a crutch, And now that I'm 2 years past that, seeing how much I've been able to just create, work into things I'm trying to work into. My God, I've lost 40 pounds. All my clothes are too big. I've in addition to my sobriety, I've also been running like a lot, like 12, 18 miles a week.
That's pretty good.
Bodyweight exercise and stuff. I know, it's amazing. I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm hot as fuck. And God, like, I'm just so much more confident with myself and accepting it. Like, I'm even figuring myself out mentally, like my own personal identity and everything. I came out as bisexual last year in June.
Nice.
And like, I don't think I would have been able to face that or really come to terms or accept that if I hadn't gone sober and had the time to be able to consider myself and think about it. Also, like, in December of the year that I quit drinking, I got a dog, and she is the most wonderful thing in my life. And it's funny to think about for me that, like, she has never lived in a world where I have been an alcoholic. Like,
right.
As long as I have her, it's kind of a reminder that I'm not who I used to be.
That's really wholesome.
Oh, she's a corgi, though. She's extremely judgmental, so, it evens out.
Our Yorkie's horrible. She's such a little fucking brat.
Oh, God, my dog's such a brat, too. We have another dog with us right now where I'm living, and he's like a 9, almost 10-year-old black lab, and he just lays around the house all day, unless there's food. And then he goes. But she is such a bully. She is such a bully to him.
Jeez. I took notes and then I just completely... We're having such a good, like, free flow discussion that I'm kind of just, like, forgetting to write notes. I love it, too. Did you play Magic while you were going through your alcoholism?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I've been playing Magic for, like, 8 years, and that was one of the things that, like, when I started playing Commander, and really, really got into Commander, it was this huge social thing, and I would bring drinks all the time. It would get rowdy. A couple of my friends are kind of sore losers, so, we get a little argumentative at times. But, like, no, that's one of the things that kind of fed into it a bit was parties with friends and socializing. Like, that was another thing that I would justify my alcohol intake. It's like, oh, I'm hanging out with friends, we're having a good time, and then I would just drink and sit and watch people.
Yeah, that summer I did all that MDMA. That I ended up going to an LGS, because usually it would just be like I would take the MDMA and either go to work. I worked overnight, so it was like, and I also worked by myself, so it was like, my shifts were normally 13 hours of me just by myself. And so I would just get really high and go to work, and then just kind of, it would just be kind of like, done and over with. And I would just bike home because I lived 2 blocks from where I worked. So that was fucking crazy. But it was this situation where I took the drug and plans had changed. And instead of going to play Vintage Cube at a friend's, we went to play Commander at an LGS I had never been to. And I just had sort of had this, like, oh my God, this, like, being on MDMA and playing Commander, which I already don't like, with, playing this format that I don't like with people I don't know in a deck that I've never played. That to me was just like, maybe I shouldn't do this socially. Maybe I should keep this, and then that was sort of where I was like, all right, I can have, or, not that I can't have fun, sober or not sober, but it was this sort of thing where it was, at least with the MDMA, I was kind of like, all right, I need to pick and choose appropriate times to do this. And that's sort of where I was like, okay, a lot of times aren't appropriate times to do this.
Yes, yeah. And something you just said, not the right time to have fun with. I'm imagining the have fun with in quotes because it was affected by the drugs, but
absolutely.
the for me, that's kind of what it was. Socially drinking too was like the alcohol gave me, or like it going or being social, going to parties, game nights, whatever,
Mhm.
was an excuse to quote have fun.
Yeah.
Being drink and release tension, and like that.
Well, you had
When
mentioned being an introvert as well, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm super introverted. Like social media is such a tax on my energy. It's so intimidating. But and like the alcohol did help to a point in those social situations where like it would relieve the noise in the brain, so to speak, of just
Yeah.
like everything's happening and a lot of stimulation, and I would be able to just act on reaction and just be in the moment and hang out with people.
Yeah.
I would realize later, after I'd gotten sober already, I never needed that. I never needed the alcohol to access that. I just was depressed. Weird. But yeah, that when the alcohol became a tool to assuage the symptom while it was also the disease, that was a huge problem.
Yeah. It's
real cyclical, and a lot of addictions get super cyclical because alcohol use, when abused, turns into depression. Like especially like my hangovers. I mentioned I have a high tolerance. I have a really high tolerance. My hangovers were literally just depression.
oh jeez.
Like I rarely ever had the full queasy headache. That rarely happened to me unless I drank too much sugar or not enough water. But every morning, like I would go to bed drunk, and a percentage of nights of the week, like a fraction of nights on the week, I would go to bed blackout.
Yeah.
And I would wake up in the morning like, oh, when did I get in bed? And it would just be the worst. I would just feel like absolute dog shit.
I totally 1,000% feel that. When I was an alcoholic, I would the same boat. I would just not even remember because we had well I was apartment hopping at the time. I had one.
Mm-hmm.
I had an apartment with one friend and then an apartment of my own, like in the same sort of area. And
Yep.
I would just it was like checkpoints in a video game. I would drink so much, black out, and then wake up at the other apartment like a checkpoint, and then it would just go. But and I would constantly have no fucking clue how I would sort of like bounce between apartments, other than like, okay, I must have got really drunk, walked to the other apartment because I ran out of alcohol to get more alcohol, drank there, and then passed out. And then it's just this loop. There's also the store I would get the alcohol from, the liquor store, was right in between those apartments. So it was fucking unfortunate.
Yeah, we lived really close to a God, I forget what it's called, which I guess is a good thing. But Total Wine. Yeah, we lived really close to a Total Wine and More, and so I would I loved and still loved like going and trying different things all the time. So I would try and not repeat any of the wines or the whiskeys that I got, trying something new all the time, and having that kind of place. Again, the accessibility. This shit is so easy to get.
Yeah.
And oh god,
it's accessibility in terms of drugs, especially social drugs, is such an awkward thing. It sounds so weird to call it peer pressure, but it really is. I was
kind of is
21 years old, and my friend who would sell drugs in our area, he had I still don't know what it was ever like called, but it was this like Chinese made disassociative pill, and we would take it, we would inhale it nasally, and it was nasally.
Nasally, yeah, nasally.
It was fucking horrible, and it was insane, and I never liked it because it made me feel dead, but like so just completely in space. And I watched him and his girlfriend just completely get addicted to it within like a month of us starting it, and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And they do this every time we hang out, so it's this
Oh,
weird
God.
like peer pressure where I just don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
So it's like when you're in situations where there is a substance that's commonly shared in like a friend group, it can be so hard to detach yourself from that. And I feel like with how
Yeah.
accessible and socially okay alcohol is, it's so hard for people to sort of recognize they have issues with drinking, or recognize that they need to slow down, or even that it's more so peer pressure than it is just a want to drink. Because I don't think my drinking started with me being like, oh, I want to drink. It was like parties in high school where everyone was drinking, so I had to drink, and it's so much like that. Nobody ever just goes, oh, I want to be addicted to something. It all starts from either like mental health or peer pressure. And I feel like if you can pinpoint that early enough, like if you could recognize that whatever substance you're abusing is for, you're doing it out of a mental health thing or a peer pressure thing, then it's, you at least have that realization, and whether or not it's easier not to detach from that is, based on the situation. It's just so stinky, and it's such a hard thing to watch unfold, I guess.
And peer pressure can be so, like, I was just thinking about it, and I put it this way, like, there's person A, who is the one getting pressured, and then there's B and C. Person B doesn't have a problem. They just enjoy the substance, and they have a lot of fun with it. Person C does have a problem, but they want to be justified in having that problem and that abuse, and be surrounded by the other two people, so they're trying to convince the person. I oftentimes was person C, trying to get people to drink more, because I didn't realize that I just didn't want to be alone. And it can be such a problem. And when it's accessible like that, like you say that you were drinking a lot in high school and everything. I never did. Like, I never went to parties. I never snuck out. I never stole alcohol from my parents or anything. They had kind of trained me to be so obedient in those years that I literally, unless they gave me like a sip of wine or something at a holiday dinner or whatever, I literally never drank until 21. And to a certain point, there are people who say, like, oh, if you don't drink a lot early, then you're not going to have a tolerance for it later, and it's just going to become a problem. Well, like, I don't know if that's a fact, but it became a problem.
I don't even know why that, even if it is a fact, that's so crazy. Saying that if you don't start drinking early, you won't have a tolerance, so you won't enjoy it when you can, is like, isn't that just grooming younger people to drink? That's so fucking... I've never heard that before. God damn. Yeah. It's fucking insane how, like, romanticized alcohol is.
Especially in America.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Fucking prohibition, and the waves of that are still overflowing. It is. That's one of the reasons why I drank so much, like, whiskey and scotch and everything. One, because I genuinely enjoyed it, but two, because I saw it as something that, I kind of wanted to be one of those whiskey guys, those scotch guys. Like, I drink it neat, or like with a single ice cube. And like at the same time, that was something, like you say, romanticized. That was something I had in mind to be like, something I want to aspire to. And at the same time, what kind of was genuine, because I genuinely didn't like sugary drinks or like super mixed cocktails or anything. I really did like scotch neat, whiskey on ice, martinis. All those, like, Manhattans. Old Fashioned was probably the most complicated drink I would ever make for myself. But, like, I genuinely enjoyed all those simple drinks. They were cool as hell because, fucking James Bond, literally
James Bond.
And romanticize all these things to be super, like, masculine, strong drinks. Like, you can just drink straight whiskey. That's how you know you're a man. Well,
I remember in...
hell of a drug.
I remember in middle school, a friend of mine thought that soy sauce was alcoholic, and he would drink soy sauce, and he would be really secretive about it. And I would be like, dude, soy sauce isn't alcoholic, you idiot. You're just gonna you're gonna give yourself like diabetes or something.
You're not drunk, kid. You're just weird.
Yeah. And he would he would empty out, not like I don't know what the origins of this is, but he would put soy sauce. He would fill like empty Gatorade bottles with soy sauce.
No.
And he would drink, and you could fucking smell it.
Oh, it just looks like chaw spit.
It's so fucking. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I was like, damn, dude, like, it's one thing if I ever get into alcohol, but I never want to be that person who's like drinking something because I think it has alcohol in it, and that's making me cool.
At least chug mouthwash. That does have alcohol in it.
Yeah, it's like hand sanitizer, like rehab and stuff. It's like soy sauce of all things.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing with that.
No, it's.
Oh.
I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just this like. In middle school, he was drinking soy sauce because he thought it was cool that it had alcohol in it.
Oh,
and I gotta wonder if like he remembers that. I haven't talked to him in 20 years probably, but like, God, fuck, you really gotta wonder. It's like young people are so hard coded to just want to drink alcohol that this motherfucker was drinking soy sauce.
It's because, at least from my perspective, my interpretation, like it's so, and especially with something like social media being so abundant, is the desire to be popular and loved and accepted and supported and celebrated. And one of the earliest things is like, oh, breaking the rules and you're a kid being a little rebellious, and we're drinking alcohol, we're smoking weed before we're legally allowed to. And it can be so damaging because that mentality, and especially when everybody else around you believes in such a shallow, vain ideology, and the people you look up to are promoting all of this and celebrating, like, we just went on a bender or whatnot. And all that can be so damaging to someone younger who doesn't have nearly as much experience and has no way of getting such experience.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the peer pressure. That is such a dangerous and effective tool.
It's crazy. And then, you're getting like, nowadays you have so many harder substances that are sort of being like thrown out there and promoted, and it's just absolutely wild to see some of the stuff that like, fuck, man. I work with somebody. I work with some high schoolers in the summer. We have kids off from summer working. Some of the shit they'll talk about is insane. Like, really? Some of the stuff, like, oh my god, I'm not gonna repeat any of it because they're all minors, and I don't want this coming back to like anybody. But like, holy fuck, man! Some of the parties these kids are going to, and they're like, oh yeah, so and so, so and so got these eye drops, and you put them in, and you like, it gets you so high. And I'm like, fucking what is this? The first thing I thought of was Cowboy Bebop. The first, the fucking the Bloody Mary fucking psycho eye drop. I'm like, dude, they have that shit. When I was in high school, we had Coke, weed, and alcohol. And then, some kids did heroin when I was in high school. These motherfuckers have eye drops. Like, how? Technology, it's just pushed. And not only is that like the kind of thing where it's like, as an adult, if my kid had like eye drops, I wouldn't question it. I'd be like, oh, why do you have eye drops? And they go, oh, I get dry eyes. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna, as a parent, question that. But now it's like, you gotta wonder what else, and how far is it gonna go to the point where it's like, so many of these drugs are and not that I'm like, anti-fun or anything. And I'm not gonna be the fun police. If you're doing stuff responsibly, it's the sort of thing where it's like,
yeah, exactly.
That's your own thing. Like I said,
responsibly, not hurting anybody else.
Yeah.
How about it?
Hey.
It's the sort of thing.
Here's the thing: is like, when it comes to that kind of stuff, people say capitalism breeds innovation. That's not what they mean. But that, what you're describing, is literally what that means. Like,
Exactly.
whatever they can make to exploit and build a profit from, fuck morals. That's exactly what that's talking about. It's just exploiting and abusing the desire of people to fit in, have fun, and look better, I guess.
Yeah. And like the more accessible and the more discreet it gets, just the heavier the pressure becomes. I feel like, you know, you could it's one thing to be like, hey, come to this party, we're gonna have like a bong or a keg, you know, that's like that's a whole object. But to be like, yeah, I have these eye drops that get you really high, it's like, oh well, that's the kind of thing where it's like, it's just fucking,
it's
dangerous. Yeah. You know, if you're responsible with whatever, again, I'm not promoting or encouraging anyone to do substances at any age, but it's the sort of thing where it's like there are situations where people do substances in moderation for whatever reason, and it's that sort of thing. But I don't think I don't think someone in high school has the mental capacity to realize or to sort of gauge like what's how can I do these eye drops in moderation versus how can I just do enough to impress? Yeah,
and
so dangerous.
It's one of those things where, exactly like you say, experimentation is fine, moderation is absolutely fine.
Yeah,
it's what is needed is a safe space to be able to experiment, and in the worst case, a safe space to be able to recover.
Exactly.
And so much of that is demonized to the point where, like, the only way they can get these experiences is illegal, immoral means.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it just leads to, like, I don't know. It's like the whole like abortion thing. If you're going to legalize something, or if you're going to make something illegal and demonize it, you're just making it harder and less accessible for people, and that inadvertently just directly makes it more dangerous. Whether or not you agree with any of that, that's not what we're here to talk about. But it's like you're taking away accessibility and therefore making what accessibility there is so much more dangerous than what was previously available.
Exactly. When it's not regulated and properly maintained, it just becomes, people die.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sorry, this got real heavy.
No, it's the discussion. There are things that have to be said and recognized when we're talking about things like this. And I think people die when they do drugs or are irresponsible in any context. It's just the reality of it. And obviously, like, nobody wants anyone to die, but with no safe alternative or resources or education or like literature on these things, you just have people just experiment and not understand that some things are super heavy to get into, and
then they get exploited by those who have at least the experience to know, hey, I can soak up all of their cash and goodwill until they don't got much more.
I feel like alcohol is very much up there. Like, you'll see younger people get addicted to alcohol and just, even in high school. I knew people in high school who were alcoholics, and I was like, holy shit, that's fucking, like, scary. Because I did sports, so I saw other athletes who were just absolutely... I also did music, too. Like, I talked about that. And music, it's a lot worse. So many theater kids I knew were on fucking crack and always drunk and shit, and it's fucking crazy. The amount of coke and Adderall that was in our theater program was insane, absolutely wild.
I was in hockey in high school, and one of the guys on my team, hockey. And one of the guys on my team, I heard at some point, I never saw this or anything, but it turned out he was on black tar heroin the entire time.
Oh my god!
Oh, man.
How do you play hockey on heroin?
I don't know.
Well, I'm assuming he wasn't
hard
on.
To imagine. He was always like He was angry all the time, really irritable.
I bet.
Feel for the guy.
God
But
damn,
yeah,
I've
like,
seen.
I was in band in high school too, and I was one of the kids that, like, I mentioned, I was super obedient growing up, and just because of the family atmosphere, and I was never a part of some of the weird shit people were doing, or like the sex and the drugs in high school. Like, I was never a party to that, but I knew enough about it because, like, I was the drum major of the high school band. Like, a certain authority level, people will talk, but I was fascinated that so much was going on at such a young age.
Yeah, it's when you have circles like that where there are hierarchies, there's just so much peer pressure. Mm-hmm. My fiance told me a story about her. It was like the flag girls or something in her high school, and she told me that they did something that I can't repeat on stream, but I was like, oh my, are you don't say it. She's like, right now, don't say it because we're live. But do you remember who was it? The flag girls, the color guard. You're laughing because it's so fucking insane. But they did something that I can't even mention on Twitch. And when I thought you were trolling, I thought you were like gaslighting, like because I would said, I said like, oh, our theater kids were all on crack and shit, and she went, oh, well, our color guard girls, blah blah blah, and I was like, no, they fucking didn't. And your buddy was like able to confirm it and shit. I'm just like, the things people will do to like fit in, or because their friends are doing it in high school, it's getting more and more extreme as the years go on.
Mm-hmm.
God damn.
I was also incredibly sheltered. No idea about that.
You're always saying that you like never saw any of that shit happen.
No, I was
sheltered.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here, more or less.
Yeah, you were saying the same thing. You were always like obedient and stuff.
Yeah,
but
like,
you were.
It was never helicopter parents or anything. I will say, one of my mom's favorite phrases was, "This household is not a democracy; it's a dictatorship." So, put that on your plate. God,
damn.
Coming from the same woman who deifies Ronald Reagan, so that's
interesting. Huh.
Weird.
Speaking of drugs, Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
God damn.
It's on my mind. Burn in hell, Reagan.
Oh my God, Reagan. Not that this has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I had encountered somebody I play online games with who's not from America. So just to throw that out there, who thought Ronald Reagan was like a joke character from Futurama and like not a real person. They thought Futurama made up Ronald Reagan, and I was like, "That's fucking the most wholesome thing ever."
Than the president we had,
yep,
a couple years ago,
who now wants to like give death penalties to the drug addicts. That specific president.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, why not just like help people? I don't know. It feels so much more easier to just help people.
No, sweetheart. That's all you gotta do. Just ignore the problem. Let somebody else deal with it. Don't touch the pores. Don't touch them. Just
isn't there a clip of like a chunk of Adderall flying out of his nose?
I don't know. I would not be surprised.
I gotta find it. Not that it's relevant to this, but
don't you love hypocrisy?
I just googled Trump Adderall.
Oh God!
A lot of Joe Rogan stuff comes up.
Oh wow, that's actually really funny.
Does Joe Rogan do Adderall?
No, I just think that's the connotation there is funny. You Google Trump Adderall, and like, oh, Joe Rogan, what? I'm
gonna send you this. This is the. I can't show it on Twitch because there's a drug. I found it. It's just a chunk of Adderall flies out of his nose. It's right into his pocket. He has it for later. Which is great. Have you never seen that clip?
I've never seen that clip. That's
It's
hilarious.
such a good clip because it's so clearly a white chunky substance.
Oh yeah.
And what else? What else flies out? Like when you think of white things that go up your nose, there's only like a small list of potential things.
True.
I can't think of much of anything else.
A couple of them are ruled out based on who he is and then what he's afraid of.
Absolutely.
God.
Man. You want to talk about magic again and just lighten up the mood?
Yeah. I actually, if we're talking about magic, I would love to, if you would allow me, bring up the color wheel.
Oh, go for it.
God, that's because like of all of magic, the color wheel philosophy has been something that has just stuck with me. Like even like more than I'm a bit of a Vorthos more than most other things when it comes to playing Magic. I love the lore of everything, and it's part of the reason why I was a little disappointed with the Secret Lair stuff, the Universe Beyond stuff. Is like it's at some point I can only suspend so much disbelief.
Yeah.
But anyway, the color pie philosophy has been something that's just so fascinating to me, and I get at the same time more than anything else, it's basically a horoscope. I recognize that and I celebrate that, but it's just it's so helpful, at least to me as well. Like when I go through different phases of my life and I'll identify with a certain color combo or something, and I'll see that and like apply it to my decisions here and like my opinions on this and what I want, does that align with this or that and the other thing? I've spent so much time trying to identify myself with that, and that's kind of one of the things that I meant by like taking the time in quarantine with sobriety to identify myself.
Right.
And I realized I thought for a while that I was fairly Orzhov aligned. Like personally, I thought oftentimes I would bend towards white and black based on what I wanted and needed and desired and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized at a certain point that living by both the sort of ideals of order and absolution that white has, and also the not amorality, but like the almost parasitism and pure goals-driven ambition that black has. I found that like when I really looked at it, like those were traits that weren't born into me. They were traits that I learned and had been taught to try and achieve. And so when I realized that like that, I would often, because like aesthetically I really like Orzhov, but when I really looked at it and tried to evaluate that, I often found that I would be misappropriating certain traits and everything. And I found that a lot of times what I would consider one thing, like I was mistaking my blue for white and a lot of my green, ironically enough, for black.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I'm very blue-green, but like that goes to say like, oh, sorry, I hit the mic.
It's okay.
That goes to say like I'm a very thinky person. Like I'm an introvert. I'm stuck in my head all the time. That's one of the things that helps me really identify the world, and it's, I guess, to relate this a little bit back to the alcohol abuse, is like it's that kind of that muddied the brain a lot, and that's something that I really valued, is my ability to be able to think and to imagine and analyze and have full function of my brain. And that's one thing that the alcohol really put away. And also to a certain extent marijuana, which is why I don't use weed a lot, is because it just makes me feel dumb. I don't like that. So once I started to realize what certain colors I was more attributed to and what those things want are things that I also want, I'm starting to figure out what direction I need to be going towards and what sort of decisions I need to be making to really make myself more comfortable with who I am and what I want.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's a horoscope. It's a card design tool made for a game, but like it's got so much complexity to it between like you can have things that are opposite together and working together, and the cards or colors that are allies can also have such strong arguments between each other. It's so complex, and it's one of those things I love to I'm fascinated with conceptually and mentally.
I never got too big into color philosophy from like a gameplay or like lore perspective. I kind of just see colors and put them in a deck. But you mentioned Orzhov, and I had earlier mentioned Gatecrash, and I feel like Return to Ravnica block did such an incredible job with really showing the aesthetics and the themes of the color combinations and the guilds, more so than the original Ravnica did, and a lot better than the second Return to Ravnica and War of the Spark and all that.
I agree with that. And it's funny that you bring up Gatecrash, because that's like, when I first started Magic, that was like my favorite set. And the existence of the Orzhov guild has had such, like I mentioned, I love the Orzhov aesthetic, and that's part of it. Like, my playmat right now is Gift of Orzhova. Like, nice. The artwork of the woman on the rooftop with the stained glass wings. Yeah. Oh, mwah, beautiful.
That card's very good and limited, and very great artwork. I feel like when I think of memorable artwork from that block, it's Voice of Resurgence and then every Orzhov card. It just absolutely, like the old Teysa and
oh god,
what was it? What's that? Not. Oh my god!
I'm not a man who has too many waifus, but Teysa Karlov steals my heart.
I'm trying to remember the name of the card. If I just Google Orzhov cards, Return to Ravnica, every single one of these is going to be like fucking fantastic. Yeah, I'm not. Oh my god, they're all so good. Alms Beast, great. Agent of Mask, well, that's old, but oh my god, I forgot Angel of Despair was like Blood Baron, Cartel Aristocrat. All these cards are just so fucking like iconic.
There's that one angel that
Debt to the Deathless
Angel.
Death Pact Angel.
God.
Woo. That was another. That was a card that I really tried to force into like Mardu decks at the time. We just couldn't really get going anywhere.
It's not great, but it's fun and it's gorgeous.
Kingpin's Pet, I loved in Limited so much. Maul of the Obsidian is the card I was thinking of. Sacrifice a creature. Creatures you control.
Plus fat roll with its stomach as a mouth.
That card art, art's just so perfect. It's just like I don't know. It's insane that you can just think of 1,000 Lashes, even their Guildmates, Orzhov Charm. It's the most aesthetically defined group in Magic. Like, you can look at card art and go, "Oh, that's an Orzhov card."
Yeah.
Like, you can look at Sin Collector and be like, "Oh, that's an Orzhov card." Like, there's just no question about it. Even Godless Shrine.
The armor on all of their knights and the guy in Executioner swing is so iconic. Like the single eye in the center with like the bell-shaped golden helmet, like lines on it, and just the star pattern on the symbol itself is everywhere. And like I'm looking at Cartel Aristocrat right now too, and like that headdress where it's just the full semicircle. Oh,
It's just
it's such an identity.
it feels like the most unique aesthetic Magic has come up with ever. And I feel like, I don't know, it's just this like high fantasy religious themed thing. I don't know. I can't even put like real words into it. It's just like if it were its
sorry, keep going.
If it were its own universe, I would 100% just be like enthralled and unable to just not want to know like the story behind like every single card art I'm looking at on this page. I'm just like, that's fucking awesome.
And that's kind of the thing that I love about the Orzhov Syndicate itself is like when you look at what they do from a color pie philosophy standpoint, it's in essence they are a black aligned guild using what white offers and can do.
Yeah.
Because like all they want is service and obedience, and they want these people to give their alms, give their lives, give their souls in service to them.
Yeah.
And so they construct this entire church and organize all of these rankings and tithes and these rules and everything. And just, that's a pure, wonderful example. And like, another thing that I use the color pie philosophy for is like, in my, I'm also a DM for a D&D game right now. And I'm making my entire homebrew world, and my pantheon that I made is 20 gods, each one represented by a 2 or 3 color pair. And so what I did for the Orzhov god in my world is it's a very militaristic god, and it's basically the god of colonization, to put it in words.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's super like combat dominion claiming shit. Whereas based on the Orzhov guild itself, the closest thing from in my world would be like the Mardu god, which is basically the blood god.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Orzhov with a lot more focus on blood itself and giving blood and exsanguination. I'm talking about it. It all sounds freaking horrifying. It kind of is. But yeah, so seeing like you mentioned such a strong identity that Orzhov has, and I come back to myself feeling very like nowadays I identify myself very Simic, very blue-green with perhaps an access to red, and I just see so many Simic factions, and they're all just like mutations or changelings or like, ooh, mystery. It's like, cool. Like clearly the designers don't even know how to make like it's either weird stuff that really has no identity or it's like super overpowered cards.
Yeah.
Freaking what is it? Uro in
Theros 2.
Theros, yeah. Like holy shit. But I guess the best association that I have is either the Teamer clan in Tarkir, which also Tarkir, freaking phenomenal. Just home run. And then they went back in time.
I never quite, like I said, I was never super into like the lore or anything. So I never got the discourse around that whole block and why Vorthos people hated it. But I didn't necessarily like the art throughout the block. I feel like it was inconsistent, and it was kind of hard to tell. Like if you were to show me a picture of like specific clan cards, I would not probably most of the time not be able to tell what clan they were a part of.
That's fair. I will say I think like especially the Mardu and Abzan factions had really clear identity. Like the Mardu were super like Mongolian, like Huns inspired, and there was all this like segmented plate armor and furs. Whereas the Abzan were very much more like Saudi Southwest Asian inspired desert stuff, scaled armor, a lot of light colors, and God, it's just so much of Tarkir pulled so strong to me. And I will say, especially because that set got announced right about the time I was thinking, there hasn't really been an enemy shard colored set yet. And then they announced that. I'm like, oh, profit!
I'm looking at card arts for Tarkir block, and I can't deal like it. I guess teamer cards kind of like, they all have bears on their fucking shit. They all look like they're fucking.
Those are all very like Himalayan, like or like North China, sort of inspiration, and it is kind of cozy. And then you get to, I will say, I think the style artistically and aesthetically improved for the teamer more than any other clan, because they went from just being basically fur-clad winter people who sometimes have shamanic revelations to these are raiders who will take your shit, and they keep raiding because their dragons are ravenous, and also they have flaming antlers. Like, what more do you want?
Oh, that's not it.
I have Dragon Lord Atarka is one of my favorite commander decks, because it's basically just ramp into giant dragons, and I always have access to this 7/7 or just 7 mana 8/8 flying trample monster. Oh, it's phenomenal.
Like I'm looking at Sultai Charm, and I would never guess this. First of all,
yeah, Sultai's a bit muddy.
It's a little weird. The card art's like a fiery, fleshy cauldron, and I guess it has the Sultai emblem in it. But I would never guess this is like a black, green, blue card.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe it's an issue with 3-color sets. It's probably really hard to like pin an art style or an aesthetic to like a shard color.
3-color is a little harder to do. When you get to more than 2 colors, and I'm talking from a philosophy angle as well, it becomes a lot easier to instead think of what they share, or instead of thinking of what they share, thinking of what they don't have.
It's interesting.
So like for the Sultai, you would think, okay, so they don't have white, they don't have red. What do white and red share? A lot of times it's going to be compassion, heroism. A lot of times that's going to be action for everyone. And when you take that away from a civilization, you'll find you'll turn it into a lot of conniving, cunning, cutthroat sort of people who are just out to get their own and will use whatever means necessary. And that's one of the things that a lot of people kind of felt was weird about the Sultai specifically, and especially when they became Silumgar, is that like there wasn't a ton of genuine representation for green with them, and that's a fair criticism of the design for that faction. Is like they were clearly very blue and black, but like you had to really scratch your noggin to think of how the green went in there.
I think the only cards I can think of that were like, in terms of mechanic wise, felt very green. Windstorm felt green, and Segu Mauler, I think it was called.
Oh yeah, Sagu Mauler.
Yeah, the morph trample hexproof, and then I think Naturalize was in the set too, and Naturalize is just a very green card, anyways. So that one's kind of free, but like in terms of like multicolor cards, the Mauler definitely felt like a trample hexproof morph card.
Knuckleblade. Knuckleblade.
Secret Plans too is also very.
Yeah, very, and that's another thing when it comes to green blue and sort of mechanical or aesthetic identities, is like that's one of the weird things they do is they support morph, which is really obscure, but like Secret Plans is kind of fun.
Yeah,
like it turns your 2/2s into 2/3s, and then you can draw a card whenever they turn face up. Like that's just genuinely decent.
Taking a look at some of the card. I don't remember a lot of these cards. I didn't really play. I got out of standard around this block. Went to modern and played a lot of cube.
I will say, if I could go back to talking about how to create these factions based on aesthetic and the colors and everything. What I mentioned, like taking the white red out of what Sultai could do. That's one thing that I think Mark Rosewater said it a while ago in the way of designing when they made the 4-color commander decks. He said that it's super hard to do or to make a card where the 4 colors all have a clear mechanical place in there.
I bet.
You basically have to focus on what they take out, and that's what really informed that perspective for me and what I mentioned earlier. And I try and do that exercise every once in a while and be like, okay, talk about white, blue, black, green, right? Remove red. What does that get you? How can you create that? Just take out red. When you take out red, you take out a lot of impulse, emotion, action, sentimentality to a certain extent, and immediacy. And so when you create something that is white, blue, black, and green aligned, you find it's a slow roll. It's a steady but inevitable accumulation, growth, expanding for the sake of expanding. I envision a zombie horde across the globe. I envision the all-consuming ooze that ate everything.
Was Commander 2016 the first 4-color one?
I think that was, yeah. And they
that
also
was the one with the Atraxa.
Created partners, yeah, exactly. Which Atraxa is a very great example of non-red because it's literally proliferate. Everything grows. Everything grows. You're on the clock and you know it's gonna end. And
then there's also the whole lore thing with the Praetors and Urabask not being associated with them. That's the one lore thing I like about that card is its color identity is a whole part of the whole Praetor story.
It's not just a mechanical thing. It's a lore thing because exactly like you said, frickin' I forget his name. The Red Praetor was even in the set where the Praetors came about. He's clearly not an immediate enemy of the Mirrans. He's literally the flavor text is let them be. They're gonna do as they're gonna do. Red is the color of empathy because emotionally it can recognize these things. Phyrexians, by definition, they're basically Cybermen. They eliminate all emotion besides what emotion will support their end goals. You can see it in the 2 planeswalkers that have already been completed with Tamio and Ajani. Neither of those are super red aligned, or at least Ajani was, but they lost that. I'm sorry, I'm getting so excited about this.
No, go for it. I love it.
The color by philosophy, that's the kind of thing that gets me. And when you get Atraxa, it's everything but red. Clearly, they completed this angel and left the red guy out of it. Oh.
Yeah, looking at the 4-color commanders, every single one of these, I can look at the 4 colors and then look at the commander itself and be like, okay, that makes complete sense. Especially Breya and Atraxa.
Yeah,
there's just no doubt that those cards should be the 4 colors that they are.
And I will also posit Yidris in there as well, the non-white one, because when you remove white from the equation, you take out order, you take out consistency, you take out hierarchy, you take out one for all for one, and it's just chaos. And that is what Yidris is all this shit is happening. It's a maelstrom of shit happening and being in all this power. And it's this immense space of it's the birth of the universe, really. It's the Big Bang.
Right.
Creation, untethered, uncontrolled.
I'm looking at the partners too. Just trying to get a sense of because color philosophy, I feel like I'm smart enough to look at a card's colors and be like, oh, this is what the aesthetic implication or the lore implication there is. But
And there are some things that like either break the color pie or take liberties with the color pie, and that's gonna happen when you have 10,000, 20,000 cards that you
Right.
created. Like, there's gonna be inaccuracies, but I try and forgive that. But I love trying to figure out what exactly something would be, or like characters in fiction trying to assign what their identity would be. Like, so I'm in the process of trying to do a video series on the color pie philosophy.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and I'm working on the video for blue. It's taken so long, so I'm trying to do it when I can make the time. It's taken so long for all of these, and I apologize so much to everyone for that. But so I already did white, but the episode I'm working on right now is I'm editing the one for blue. And one of the sections I have in it is characters from pop culture that are mono blue. And my favorite one for that, for blue, is Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal, you think Hannibal Lecter will be blue?
Super mono blue. Because, like, he gets in your head. He's super, like, tuned in to how people's brains work and the mentality of it. And people will say, oh, he's a cannibal because he's, like, black or green. Like, no. When he talks about his cannibalism, he's talking about how to pair somebody's spleen with a fine Chianti. And like he's trying to find the perfect meal, and that's the perfection that gets into it, is because blue is super focused on perfection. He's twisted with his cannibalism and everything. That's not defined or restricted by a color. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to people identifying colors based on one basic thing.
Yeah.
Like, people always attribute black to being super like demonic and evil and death, and it's like, nah, it's just amorality.
Yeah.
People will attribute white to being good, and it's like, no, actually, white just propagates the idea of good versus evil and puts themselves on the best side for them.
Yeah, like we talked about the Orzhov earlier.
Exactly. That's a big white thing, is just subjective objectivity, to put it in a weird way. I go over white in my one of my first videos for that. But
is this a series that you started?
Yes.
Ah, I didn't catch that. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, it's old. It's old. I'll try and bring up and send you the video for it, but it's under. I call the series "Let's Talk Over Pie" because I'm clever. But yeah, the first video, the very first video in that playlist is just an explanation bare bones of the color pie itself. But what I'm trying to do is do each individual color monocolored, and then eventually I'll start to get into color pairs and stuff. Copy link here. I'll send it to the link to the white video to you in Discord. But and also forgive the poor video quality. Like, I've got some BS going on with my camera. I'm also doing all of this in Blender because I have no money. But it's something that I've always wanted to talk about and explain and make it a lot more accessible, because the whole point of that series for me is to make it accessible to people who want to use it in just like our regular world, as opposed to just a fantastical world like Magic. Like, even in the very first video, just explaining the colors, each color has its own phrase that it tries to guide itself and go by. Like, for white, it's peace through order. For green, it's what is it? Harmony through acceptance. For black, it's power through ruthlessness. But I even mentioned it in that video. I'm like, that's great for high fantasy and romanticized stories, but like, to focus that into our world and something that's a bit more relatable, I think I said satisfaction through opportunity is a very much more accessible way. But at the same time, I was also at the time still convinced that I was white-black alliance. I was a bit more forgiving of black. But yeah, I love it so much.
It sounds like it like color philosophy has just had such a huge impact on not only how you see yourself as a person, but you know, just your overall enjoyment of Magic.
It really does.
Do you
Like,
do you like enjoy it
whenever
more
I
than
freshly
gameplay?
identify myself with a certain color pair or something, I try and force that deck to be viable in Standard.
Do you enjoy that aspect of Magic more than the gameplay?
Honestly, at this point, kind of. Like,
Yeah.
I still enjoy playing. I still have fun playing with people, but at this point, I kind of use Magic, and especially like Commander and Commander decks, as a form of self-expression.
Yeah, I hear that a
Like,
lot from Commander players.
yeah, exactly. Like, through creating this deck, I'm putting a piece of myself into it. Like, and especially in times when I have identified with a certain color pair, like I mentioned, like my love letter to Orzhov is in between two decks. One of them is a Lisa deck, like the first Lisa that was printed, where when anybody casts a spell, they lose 2 life. Well, in that deck, I shoved almost every single Extort card I could find because I love Extort to death. And that was at the time I was super invested in Orzhov. And then now, when I've reassigned myself to Simic, like I put back together my old Krufix God of Horizons deck, and it's just so satisfying to get that out. Like, I can imagine that's what a musician thinks when their song is finished, or a painter thinks when their art is done. Like,
Yeah.
mm.
Do you? This might be like there might be an obvious answer to this question, but
Go for it.
was when you were going through your drinking stuff, did you have different did you have a different philosophy on all this and all this deck building? Were you just as expressive with how you built decks, or is it different now that
I think I didn't recognize it. I think it was still there. I just didn't acknowledge it or notice that was what was happening.
Gotcha.
It's hard to say. Like I said, when I drank and when I was drinking, a lot of that was to quiet the mind.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, my personal truth is that I highly value my ability to think and analyze and extrapolate and come up with all these things. Like, that's why the color pie is so deeply impressive to me, is because it can apply to all these things. And like,
Right.
when I'm not able to think, I'm not doing all of that right. And so at the time, I guess, to try and answer your question, it really didn't come to me at all. And honestly, the times when I was sober, I was thinking about it more, and it's actually a bit happier.
That's interesting. I figured it would be because you had said things earlier about, you know, you think you said like quiet the mind just now, and I was wondering, and I was just wondering if like that sort of thing was always there subconsciously, and now it's just because you're more aware of where you are in life and as a person. If that was a sort of thing where it's, you know, you were always doing it subconsciously, but now you're open to your feelings and open to who you are, and how it's just, you know, easier to express yourself through deck building.
It is. It really is. I guess if I were to try and explain it through using the color pie, I think I had gotten to a point where I had fully ingrained my drinking into my identity and sort of accepted that as part of myself and part of my nature. And I guess that kind of spoke more to my green alignment than much else. And it just felt natural. I accepted it. And that's sort of the danger of going too far into one of those color directions and not having that sort of personal balance. Is like, I went too far into compliance. That's not exactly the right word. But like, I've always been super critical of green and settling. There's a more intellectual word for the concept of settling, but that's kind of what I've always been hypercritical of. And for the longest time, I thought that was my black alignment self that just hated the idea of being in one place forever. But really, it was the blue, like trying to be like, hey, this isn't where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be so much bigger. You're supposed to be doing so much more. And meanwhile, green me is just like, oh, alcohol is nice. Chug, chug, chug. Oh, where we gotta go?
That's so. I never thought about like you compare it to Zodiac stuff. My fiance is very into stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really all it is. It's an easy 1-to-1. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know. I'm going to assume that that's not really what Garfield is. Richard Garfield, not the cat.
That's not what he intended with it.
I'm going to assume, yeah. But magic has just evolved. Just like us as people, magic has just evolved so much throughout the years that we can kind of just look at so many expansions and iterations of color philosophy and world building, and just kind of compare it to things like that, and you make a very convincing argument that it's very 1-to-1. But I personally, I'm going to watch your color philosophy videos because I'm more intrigued now than I ever have been.
Absolutely.
Like I said earlier, I never really cared for color philosophy or the color pie in general. I kind of just play the good cards and try to win.
Yep, which is totally fine. Like that again is something that I can attribute to colors. Like blue is the achiever, black is the one that just cares about victory and winning and everything. And like a lot of times things that aren't like I will say blue is also the most imaginative color, so it will attribute itself to things that are idealistic sometimes, or potentiality and possibility is something that blue and black also both really like. But like a lot of Timmies that just like playing big shit are gonna be red, they're gonna be green. A lot of people that are spikes are just trying to manipulate whatever they can to get to victory. That's gonna be easily blacks, commonly blue. And a lot of people that feel like things like mill or control magic are cheating are going to be very white aligned, because they're like, no, I play by this way. We're both supposed to play with creatures and throwing them at each other.
That was like most of Reddit during the Zendikar Rogues age.
Yeah, that
was one of my favorite like eras of MTG Reddit, where every post was just ban every rogue. And then a lot of it was contributed to like Eldraine, but most of the rogues that saw play were from Zendikar. And that whole saga was the funniest thing ever, because it's like that deck completely, if you completely remove the word mill from every card, it still has flash. So every card that deck worked so well because every playable rare at the time, every playable rogue, I should say, had flash, and it was just a really aggressive deck. But it was the mill that was the problem, and people wanted the mill cards banned.
And in reality, even with all those mill cards, by the end of the game, you wouldn't be past half your library.
Yeah. You would
die. It's like your life total. The only card that matters in your library is the last one.
I forget. Yep. I forget who it was, but it was in a CFB Pro article. They had said like the reason Rogues is so good in the meta is because you get under your opponent's skin with all the milling, and then by the time they're like able to like pull themselves together, they're at 2 life. They've just taken so much damage and just focused so much more on like, all right, I got to stop this mill. And then it's the first game. The first match of a best of 3 with Rogues, you're just attacking every turn, and then game 2, you're just milling them because they've already just taken so much psychological heat just from the mill. And I guess that
the thing is, like, when you're thinking on a higher level, like I not only can I play with the cards on the table, but there's another person across from me.
Yeah,
people have faults. I'm very, very blue and black lines. Like, I can manipulate your freaking mind. You're having so much trouble, you make mistakes, and I'm going to capitalize on that. Rogues was very on color.
I miss that deck. I wish it was playable in... well, I guess it's playable in Historic, but not really Explorer.
Yeah, I'm not a digital cards kind of guy. I play Arena a ton, but like the Historic stuff that they've been doing, I just... It rings weird with me.
I just wish there was an eternal
Alchemy
format.
stuff.
The alchemy stuff made historic really awkward,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't mind if the alchemy stuff was in historic. What I mind is like the way it impacts it, like the nerfs and stuff.
The
There
fact
are-
that it's required to be in there. But
Yeah.
like the nerfs and everything hit me too. Like I wish it was just. It messes with my mind because like I drafted Baldur's Gate while it was going through.
Mhm.
I did that on stream, and like I'll see those cards and like, okay, I know what that does, and then I'll see the real card, like in paper, and I'm like, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was afraid of going into it.
It's so I don't know, when I wrote that thread on Jump In, I was like, this is such a great way for new people to like explore limited and standard, but for whatever reason there are alchemy packs that contain cards that aren't standard legal, and it's just so fucking bizarre to me. And it's like on the Magic Arena channel, they just did a video about Jump In, and it's just like the fact that it's so catered to the alchemy packs. Like if you're playing it, I pointed this out, and I thought I was crazy. I thought I'd lost my fucking mind, but I proved it. There is a community of people who will play Jump In just to like farm Vault progress, and they know what the best packs are. They know how to force the best packs, and it's like when you encourage new people to play that format, and you have like lurking spikes in there, it's so hard to get players to understand how this game is supposed to work. And now you're giving them decks. I think, what was it, 6 out of the 10, we did 10 Jump-ins, and 6 out of the 10 decks had I want to say like 3/4 of them were not like of the 40 card piles, 3/4 of them of 6 decks were not standard legal. It was all like alchemy cards. And I'm like, how is this supposed to get people into standard if it's not giving them standard cards?
And I think to a certain point, that's kind of a fault of Magic Arena, just in what it is.
Yeah.
Because when you remove the social aspect, which is exactly what happens with Arena, when you're able to play it more accessibly, and like over the internet and everything, naturally that's what's gonna happen. But a consequence of that is you remove so much of like the fun of being able to play big stuff and the social contract, and all of a sudden now everybody's grinding dailies with the best deck.
Yep. Which is like, I don't mind that as like a spike, but like it's
but
I feel bad for like I can't help but feel weird and not guilty, but like I feel sorry for people who can only play one match a day on their phone, and the match they queue and they go into standard, and it's just against somebody who's just playing whatever the best deck at the moment is, and it's just like, I don't know, you can't really work around that. The most you could do is have something like Jump In that's not designed to be competitive, but just through how pushed a lot of cards in Alchemy are, you get these packs and Jump In that are just like instant wins. Which ironically, I think the 2 best packs in Jump In are Wolf Pack and Werewolves. For some reason, are 2 different packs, and they're both just every wolf from Midnight Hunt. It's very fucking funny. Not a single alchemy card. It's just like 20 wolves and Arlencord and the wolf and werewolf lord, and it's like, who thought it was a good idea to make wolves and werewolves 2 different packs? Yeah, I think we're gonna start wrapping things up. Is there?
Yeah, we've been over 2 hours. Oh my god!
Over 2 hours. That's why I love this. When I originally pitched this, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be a 30 to 40 minute show where I sit down and we talk about all that. And then the first episode was just like another 2 hour thing. I was like, this can't be a 30 to 40 minute. People have a right to have like, a long talk platform to just get everything out. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it was wrong of me to want it to be 30 or 40 minutes, like morally, but it was wrong of me mathematically.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a poor guess.
Yeah, I had no idea that prior to the first episode that it would be something people were watching for more than 30 minutes, and that we would be able to just have like discussions like the ones we're having. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what do you got? Any plugs? Anything you want to shout out?
Oh, I'll just go over my socials, I guess.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm at Neal_Akins on Twitter. That's NealAkins.
I will be posting them all in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. I'm Ishmelin on Twitch, Ishmelin on YouTube. I post up my VODs from my streams on my YouTube channel afterwards, so it's always available there. I guess like I went over on a tirade, I'm in the process of trying to make a Color Pie Philosophy video series, which it takes time, but I'm doing my best to get there. I'm also a voice actor, still kind of at the beginning of his stuff, and it's another thing I'm trying to make the time for. At the moment, I'm kind of holding off because I feel like my recording situation isn't where I would like it to be, but I have an opportunity soon to be able to update that. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and also on my YouTube channel, I do have like a little playlist of flavor text that I've read out and like put some like effects on, little audio effects on, and I had a lot of fun with that. I've got some more recorded still. I need to go through, but they're little like 30-second things. They're super fun. God, there was when the Dominaria stories came out, I actually like narrated those stories on stream, and that was fun. That was really fun.
That's sick. I was going through. I didn't unfortunately have enough time. I kind of just like went to work this morning, got home, and just kind of I had a lot going on this week and stuff. So normally I want to be like a little more prepared going forward. But like I tried to binge watch as much of your stuff as possible. But like so
you and my cousin both, or my nephew both.
Yeah, but thank you so much, so much for coming,
letting me on here and talk about my own my own stuff. Yeah,
I can imagine it's not easy to come on to like a channel with someone you're unfamiliar with and talk about stuff like this, but it's like a very brave
you underestimate
thing
my vanity. No, but yeah, for real though, it is it's nice to be able to talk about it in a situation where one, it's welcome and supported, and two, it's actually hopefully I know this is kind of a cliche, but genuinely, if me talking about my struggles, what I went through, helps somebody recognize their own problem and actualize their own recovery from that, it'd be all worth it.
Yeah, that's any chance to just get people to like listen to people who went through this and be like, have that like, oh, that's what I'm going through. Maybe I should, do something about it. That's
exactly
fucking poggers, as they say.
As those kiddos
as the kiddos say. But yeah, I'm gonna end the stream and come right back, and I guess we're playing 5-color artifacts and historic because I can't think of a better deck to play. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But I will be right back, guys. I always forget how to end the stream.